Alright, got a new machine here, so I'm going to do some drawing and test out how well Wirecast is going to be able to handle the load of sending out this stream while I'm working on this older machine running Photoshop. The older machine is the one that's been really giving me some seriously bad problems, so we'll see how that goes. But for now, just hope for the best. See what happens. Try and keep this going for at least 30 minutes or so and see how many drop frames I have and so on. Looking over here at Wirecast. Yeah, this machine's a champ. The one running the Wirecast is just heads and shoulders above the other one. It's only using 15%, 18% of CPU, no dropped frames. Really solid. No surprise there. This older one, though, has been giving me such a bad time, not holding a charge even on the battery. USB-C ports just failing. And then sometimes working again, and then just dropping out in the middle of being connected to something, which is maddening, to say the least. So we'll see what happens. If I can keep it running Photoshop without choking, I think this setup might be fine for at least the near future. So I really don't want to have to incur any unnecessary expenses by adding a brand new machine to the mix here. We've already got one of those, and yeah, so don't want to have to do that. Let's see what happens. So just drawing ahead here, I think maybe this guy will be some kind of I don't know, maybe some kind of like weird villain or something, or like weird creature. I'm using the new charcoal brushes for Photoshop. Those will be available for download on the Adobe Brushes page. I'm gonna say probably by end of August at the latest. They're already available for people who have Fresco. They're now baked into Fresco, actually, which is really cool. So if you have an iPad, you can go ahead and grab them and see how they are. But this is one of the Vine charcoal brushes, and this one is, well, it's a delight to draw with. That's all I can say. It's very smooth, fluid drawing experience. Trying this is a challenge, to try and do like a head that's just slightly turned, Like there's my center line. It's just kind of like just a little bit off center, but not enough to where you can call it a 3/4 view. So you gotta pay attention to distances here, left and right. This is what I tell my students when we're doing portraiture classes. How much space do you see between outside corner of the eye and the outside of the head there, from basically before you get to the ear? That side plane of the head right there that you're catching right here. And how much of that is visible? And if the answer is a little, if you're seeing more of it on one side than the other, then yeah, the head is turned. Simple as that. Even if it's just barely turned, pay attention to that kind of stuff. It's important. So I'm going to take this nose and just design it a bit more here so I understand what I'm looking at. There we go. There's that bridge. Ball of the nose. I could make that dip a bit lower. This guy's going to have really kind of thin lips, I think. There's not going to be much going on in that upper lip. Just keep it kind of thin. Sort of modeling here, understanding these forms, a little bit of sculpture, I guess you could call it, when trying to figure out these planes of the head and all that business. There we go. I guess the head is not totally straight on. We're seeing a bit more of the top of the scalp, so I'm going to place the ears just a little higher up here like this to reflect that. See a little less of this ear because, of course, that head is turned slightly. Actually, why don't we, it'd be fun, we could do this, make this guy kind of like some kind of elf or goblin or something like that. Just give him a little pointy ear action there. I think that's more interesting. This underside of the eyes here, which would, if there were top light, that would be basically more in shadow, like so, and you'd have shadows being cast here, right next to the inside corner of the eyes, and up there close to where we start to change direction and come up to that bridge of the nose, right? Maybe a little shadow under the nose, maybe a little shadow here under that lip. And here on that side plane. And the same over here. All right, time has come in the drawing. This is the time to do a quick check and see how it's looking. So we're gonna flip that horizontally. All right, just make some minor adjustments. Let's see. Good. Looks pretty good. Sometimes I have trouble with symmetry, but this time I think it is fine for now. Good enough. And remember, nobody's face is perfectly symmetrical. That's not a thing. Okay. Get the rhythms of the head kind of figured out there, thanks to the very abbreviated Riley approach that I'm taking here. I think these could stand to be a little bit smaller. I'm using the clear mode here for the brush. I'm not erasing. I'm actually I am erasing, but I'm erasing with the brush by using a brush mode. Up here, brush modes. Yes, almost any Photoshop brush can instantly be made into an eraser by using that brush mode. That's the trick that I tell people all the time, even though some folks know about it, but not enough. I still find that a lot of people are unaware that you could do that with a brush. Make it into an eraser when you need it, just like that. All right, time check. Let's see here. We are about 10 minutes in, so I'll carry on with this for like 15 or 20 minutes just to test how we're doing. We've got still only using about 16% of the CPU, which is crazy because the other machine, the one I'm using right now to run Photoshop, used to have the fans just going at such a high speed I could barely hear myself talk over them. And I would usually be hitting somewhere around like 70%, sometimes higher. CPU usage, which is just a disaster for streaming. Let's flip this back, see how we're doing. Okay, there we go. Bring that back to normal. Let's see here. Let's give ourselves a little point to aim for there on the neck. And then come back around like so. Get those traps in there. And here we've got our clavicles carrying out and out. Bumpity bump. And I think it'd be nice to give this person some kind of like a cloak or something. So let's see how that feels if we come down this way. Bring that a little bit lower, like that more. Just have that neck feel a little longer. And top of the head, should we do some hair or something on this figure? Let's see. Could be nice. I like the big forehead. I like to kind of have it wrap around that forehead. So we go back and forth like so, and have a couple of strands off there, and then have it coming out the back. Could be kind of nice. Alrighty. Kind of a neat looking goblin-y sort of fellow. There we go. Yeah. Kind of like this guy. I think he's looking all right. Sometimes these little exercises work out better than others. It's so much of it is down to the very beginning of the drawing where you start mapping stuff out and like trying to do some construction, so to speak. It's like you realize really soon sometimes that you just don't have your shapes looking right. And usually it's hard to rescue a drawing from at that stage. You know, I mean, if you move beyond that stage and don't fix it, or don't, just like spend time on those shapes and making them work, it can be a real problem. I think in this instance, that lay-in worked out pretty well and was fine, so you know, you wind up with something that once you start to draw over it on top of it, you know, and put some more stuff in there, it turns out okay. So now let's see, what else should I do with this fella? Well, could paint over it a little bit maybe. See what happens if I do that. That'll also give Photoshop a bit more to do. I'm going to take my headphones off here for a minute and see how the fans are spinning on that machine. Older machine's pretty quiet. I mean, I am working with a pretty simple brush and not a huge document. Let's see, this is only, yeah, 7 by 9, so certainly nothing huge. The Wirecast machine is using quite a bit of, the fans are going, but again, CPU usage is minimal. I'm going to do a quick activity monitor check, see what we're doing there. So Wirecast is eating up 800 megs of memory. Interesting. It's using 113% of CPU. It's always interesting to me when it goes over 100%. I find that very confusing, but whatever. We've been going for 17 minutes, 18 minutes now, and dropped 1 frame. So it's certainly not terrible. Upload speed is steady at 3,000 kilobytes per second, which is not great, I don't think. I was led to believe you want to be able to broadcast out at about 10K, so I'll have to double check with Paul on that. Anyway, yeah, so maybe this, where's this guy? Yeah, you know, you'd probably expect to find him in some deep dark woods, you know, with some spooky trees and all that. So we could have some trees back here. I know that's a little cliche, but hey, not every cliche is a bad thing. You know, some things just work, so you go with them, right? We've been telling the same stories with different characters, with the hero's journey and whatnot, for only a few thousand years, and people still want to watch it, so I'd say stick with what works, right? Don't have to reinvent the wheel every time in a piece. So there's our creepy background. Maybe there's some like mist or something that obscures parts of the trees. Whatever. And they would fade into the bottom here. I think the one thing that's missing is a focal point for the lower third, which, you know, the way you solve that is you give him a necklace and you say, oh, this is the necklace of blee blah blue, which was some symbol of blah blah blah. Who cares? Whatever. This will give you a little focal point down there. So we have something we can look here. We can look here. You want to give it some contrast, so of course you just make this area dark and have the necklace pop off of it. The old tricks are still the good ones. They still work. People have been using these tricks, these compositional tricks, forever. And you're no lesser an artist if you take advantage of them. You're fine. Don't worry. There, see, you add some contrast, blah, 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 and all of a sudden, bam, it pops, and you go, ooh, I'm supposed to look at that, aren't I? I'm supposed to look over there, aren't I? Yeah, and just if I want to tone this whole thing, could always just set this to multiply, grab a bigger brush. I like this fine charcoal brush. And just make it like really massive, like 200 pixels, and then just add some tone here and here. So that's not just stark white. Darken up this action here. Yeah, and make his hair dark. Okay. Darken up everything there under the brow ridge and make that a bit more, add a bit more contrast there. And of course, you know, for the background, we do the same thing. Let me see if I can switch it up. Let's see here if I have a nice brush for just covering an area really quickly. But Spring 2020, what do we have here? Yeah, maybe the peel brush is good for that. See how that looks. Sure, whatever. Works for me. Some darker bits here and there. Grab some white and we'll do some of those hits of the mist or whatever coming through here and there. Make sure we fade out the bottom of the trees. Can darken all this up here. Because it's not terribly important for us to look there. And I think that's fine for a little sketchy sketch for now. Just showing that there's little pockets there where the trees in the background pop. Ideally, if I were really painting this, I would probably have some light come through there or something. I'd have to figure out the lighting and make it more interesting than what we're seeing here. I mean, this is like kind of just making everything kind of flat and not that exciting, but this is the other great thing about working with a variety of brushes. It's like some just force you to do one thing and others force you to do another. So a big fat brush like this forces me just to think about big areas. And I can't be too precise about what I'm doing, you know? Alrighty, let's see here. We are at 25 minutes, still only using 16%, CPU hovering around 3,000 kilobytes per second upload, which of course I think that's down to my stinky internet connection, which I gotta work on, possibly upgrading. But successful test, I think, for now, so I will I'll wrap this up. I have a drawing. The drawing is fine. Go to 100%. You can see all the texture there and all that stuff, courtesy of those nice charcoal brushes and that one brush from the spring 2020 update. Here's something fun you can do. You can just grab all these and group them together, duplicate the group, and merge it. Grab a smudge tool and play around. Let's try that. So we'll go to the Mega Pack paint box and let's see what we have here. Probably the new one, and probably want to set that about 90. Let's see what that does, just to kind of bring some stuff, blend it together a little bit more. It's almost like you can take your drawing and kind of like turn it into something like an underpainting just by smudging the darks and lights around. I mean, it doesn't always work, but it's a nifty thing to try with your own work and see how it goes. By the way, that's of course why I duplicate the original group of layers, because I don't want to, if I were to mess this up entirely, I could always go back to where it was. The beauty of working digitally. Endless options to play with, right? You got undo, always there to be your friend. So that's cool. Yeah, I think, you know, this would be a cool way to transition from a drawing to a painting, like as a step in between, kind of. That makes sense. A lot of what I'm doing, by the way, I'm just controlling the pressure. I'm like, if I exert more pressure, basically, I'm gonna have a bit more of a smudging kind of effect. A little less pressure means not so much. You can use the bracket keys to enlarge or shrink the size of the brush you're using for the smudging. So I really only meant for this to be about 30 minutes. It's good that I'm pushing it a little longer, since my master classes for Adobe will be a solid 55 minutes. So it's important that these two machines play nicely together and can handle that. length of a stream, right? Anyway, it's kind of a nifty thing to try right there. Just do a little bit of smudgies. Take the whole background and just kind of push it all together and blend it and see how that all works. Another thing you could do, of course, is kind of play around with mixer brushes to see how that goes. And definitely an underappreciated, lesser used feature in Photoshop, the mixer brushes. Mixer brushes are also now in Fresco. How about that? So if you haven't tried Fresco, remember, it's free. Go grab it. It is a free app for iPad and some Windows devices, you know, mainly tablet computers, so like things like Surface Pro, things like that. I believe there's an HP tablet that is supports Fresco as well. Kind of lost what was happening in the background there. Now it's just kind of a big smudgy mess. But that's fine. Like, you could easily come in and paint your way out of that. I was mentioning mixer brushes. If I were to use a mixer brush, for example, I would use one of the real oil brushes, even just the basic wet oil. Grab one of these lighter colors and just paint into the background like this. And it'll do some nice stuff like what you're seeing here, where it mixes whatever's already there. And yeah, isn't that nice? See what you can do there? Light pressure means I'm basically picking up more of the color that's already there on the canvas. So you can really play with how much control you have with that kind of stuff. You can also come here and you can make it so you can only load a solid color when you paint, right? And here you can clean the brush. Let's see if I can get it to there after each stroke. So see how it's got a little bit of paint left on it there when I paint right there, boop, like finger painting. If I don't want that to happen, I just say clean the brush, and now it goes back to white and picks up whatever's there, and then, you know, every time I paint a new stroke, it's gonna do that. Cleans that brush. There we go. Lots you can do with all these tools, you know. Here we are, about 45 minutes into this. What am I saying? 45 minutes? It's only been 35 minutes. Feels like 45 minutes to me, I don't know. So, yeah, it's fun to take this drawing and kind of turn it into a painting, or like the beginnings of a painting, you know, like an underpainting, so to speak. By using these little tricks. So we had the charcoal drawing, and let's go cancel. I'm making sure I can sample solid color, paint with it. There we go. Look at that. So now I'm just painting around this cat to make sure that carve out that silhouette a bit more clearly, you know? Boom! Well, maybe you learned something here. Maybe you didn't. I learned something. I learned that I should be fine this week to do my streams with this new setup. I was having a real panic there, thinking, oh, time to buy a new computer. It's going to cost a fortune, and don't know if we have budget for it, yada, yada, yada. Instead, I think this new setup will work. Of course, the USB ports on this other machine are not very reliable, but so far we seem to be holding. That could change tomorrow from my experience, but for now I'll just assume that things are working as they should be, and let's just hope that that's the case. Wednesday, when I start my draw along show, pick that back up again. Alrighty, bam, 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 just giving some little details to this medallion thing or whatever it is that we're supposed to be able to pay attention to. So a little focal point down there for the bottom third of our drawing here. So, all right. Guess I'll sign off here. Thanks for hanging out. Of course, I could play with this for another 4 hours, eventually get it to where I want it to be. But you know, sometimes it's fun to just take something only so far and then call it a day and say, well, that's all I'm going to do with that today, and I'll probably never revisit this. Who knows? But I know me, and I know that I'm busy. My schedule makes it hard for me to come back to things once I've put them down, so the most likely scenario will be that this just remains the way it looks now, and that'll have to be fine. So okay, I think that's good enough for me to sign and leave it alone. Boom, 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 bam. All done. Thanks for hanging out. Thanks for watching, and I'm glad this all worked out. And see you all next time for something more official. This was a very casual stream. Ciao for now.